I don't think we'd be here if it wasn't for the pandemic. It's the events of March of 2020. I think that was a catalytic month. The K-shaped recovery, the lockdown of Main Street and the rapid recovery of Wall Street forced everyone to review their assumptions about the way economy works and the way you create shareholder value. And so that was critical. I think the economic response of the bankers was kind of critical, right? I mean, if the cost of capital goes from 5% to 15%, that's a catalytic event. It's very difficult to generate shareholder value when the hurdle rate is 5%, the risk premium is 4%. You have to get an 8% yield or an 8% increase in cash flow every year in order to create shareholder value. And if you can't get 8% or more cash flow growth, what can you do? You can leverage up. You can borrow $1 billion, buy back half your stock, and you can take a 4% cash flow growth company and make it look like 8%. And so you can almost make that work from 2010 to 2020, right? And so you look at every publicly traded company or every company you can imagine. How do you make stocks hold value? You leverage up. How do you make real estate hold value? You refinance, which is leveraging up. How do you make bonds hold value? You refinance them. How do you do that? You keep lowering interest rates. If you can lobby in order to get the bankers to lower the interest rate from 5% to 4.5% to 4% to 3.5% to 3% to 2.5%, you're leveraging up the bonds as you're leveraging up the real estate, and then you're leveraging up the companies. And you can use that to take a 5% grower and make it look like a 10 or 15% grower. If you look at Apple's revenues are flat for 3 years. Its stock is doubled, right? Its cash flows were fairly flat, but it was buying back its shares. So that's one way to be successful. The other way to be successful is you be Google or Facebook or Amazon. What they did is they grew 20% top line and 20% bottom line. So if you're growing 20% top line and bottom line in an environment where the cost of capital is 5%, that works, right? You hold that stock, you made money. That was a good trade. Now, what happens to every stock where you can't leverage up and you can't grow more than the cost of capital? They don't hold value. Okay, so it's interesting until 2020, but in March of 2020, it became untenable, right? Because whatever you think you might have done at 5% cost of capital, when it goes to 15% or 20% cost of capital, and you're fully leveraged up, and the interest rate is at near zero, at that point, how many companies are there in the world? How many companies in the S&P 500 can grow their cash flows and their revenues 25%? Like from this point, right? Right. I mean, it just is impossible, right? 1%, 5%.
Last year, maybe it was like Zoom.
90% can't. So coming back to my observation, right? When do people discover new ideas? When you're forced into a corner? When your back is in a corner? When do people make paradigm shifts? In a war? When they die? Or when there's a war, right? When the old generation dies and Peter Schiff's son likes gold, right? Bill Miller's son likes Bitcoin, right? When the new millennials, a new generation comes along, they might get it. Otherwise, you need a war. And, what was the war? The currency war? And on the other hand, Bitcoin matured. I mean, Bitcoin was 1, 2, 3 years old. You have to check the box. Will the IRS give it property treatment? Will the SEC deem it property? That's a pretty big deal, being property and not a security, right? You saw what happens with Ripple when you're a security.
Right.
It's illegal for Cynthia Lummis to promote a security in Congress, whereas promoting property ownership in Congress is the American way. And so that decision, is it property or is it a security, is pretty critical. I think if you look forward, you say Bitcoin's been de-risked. Will it be forked? Well, it was, and we know what happened. Will it be hacked? It wasn't. Will it be banned? It hasn't been banned. Is there any rhetoric to suggest they'll ban it? No, except in China. But you know what else China banned? They banned Google, Twitter, Facebook. Okay, right. How'd those trades do in the last decade? So China is totally consistent. They banned the information network. They banned the mobile network. They banned the speech network, and they're going to ban the monetary network. And Bitcoin's the monetary network. And that just means in the Western world, in Europe and the US, Bitcoin is going to be the predominant digital monetary network. And then it'll have rails on it, be regulated in the same way that stocks and bonds are. And when it is, all the crypto anarchists will be freaked out that there's some regulation, and all the people at BlackRock and PIMCO and Fidelity that have more money than God will say, okay, well, it's safe now. We might as well buy 100 billion of it.
Right.
You know, what I say to the crypto anarchist is, why don't you just get along with the institutions and the corporations for now? Hold your nose. And when you've made billions of dollars or tens of billions, take all your money, buy an island, start your own country, and do it your way. But wouldn't you be better, I mean, to get the $100 billion first and then start the country, than to have your privacy and then have no regulation, and and your Bitcoin is worth like $42.
Right.
And it's like, it's not that I don't believe, I believe the ethos. I'm a libertarian. I'm all in favor of all of these, individual sovereignty and the like. I think there's a certain order to go about these things. Yeah. And the first order is make the monetary network successful.
Yeah.
And then after that, figure out what you're going to do, and don't hate on Square and PayPal because they put some rails on some part of their network. It's like, it's still going to benefit you as the hodler.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Grayscale is benefiting every hodler, even though, that's anathema, it's not your keys, it's not your coin, but arguably Grayscale is doing more for the Bitcoin ecosystem than anybody because they're channeling huge amounts of institutional money into it to the benefit of everybody.